There's a truth most men completely miss when it comes to capturing and keeping a woman's attention. It has nothing to do with money, status, or how impressive you look on paper. It's not about being the funniest person in the room or the most confident one either. What actually separates men who create real interest from those who are quickly forgotten is something far more subtle. It's the ability to make her feel truly understood, not just observed. Most conversations stay stuck on the surface. Routine questions, predictable answers, rehearsed stories. But real attraction begins when a woman feels she's being seen in a deeper way, not judged, not evaluated, simply understood. And that only happens when the conversation shifts away from performance and moves into presence. Before going further, think about your last meaningful conversation with a woman you were interested in. Did it feel alive, like something real was unfolding? Or did it feel like both of you were just following an invisible script, saying what people usually say without ever really connecting? Most men don't fail because they don't try. They fail because they never leave the surface level. And here's the uncomfortable reality. If your communication feels predictable, she already knows how it will end. And once someone becomes predictable, they also become forgettable. Now imagine something different. Instead of trying to impress her, you create a moment where she slows down, where she actually thinks before responding. Not because she's confused, but because she's feeling something more meaningful than usual. That pause is where curiosity begins, and curiosity is where emotional investment is born. Ask yourself, when was the last time someone asked you a question that made you feel genuinely understood, not judged or analyzed, just seen? That feeling is powerful. And once you understand it, you begin to understand what people are actually searching for beneath the surface. My name is A Feminine Intimacy, and what I'm sharing isn't about manipulation or scripted lines. It's about understanding human connection at a deeper psychological level. Because when you learn this, you stop chasing attention and start naturally becoming someone people are drawn to. Most women live in a world where they are constantly noticed but rarely understood. Compliments, small talk, surface level attention, they receive it all daily. But being noticed is not the same as being seen. And over time, constant attention without depth becomes emotionally draining. That's why most men get categorized so quickly. Not because they lack value, but because their presence feels familiar. They ask the same safe questions. They tell the same stories. They try to appear impressive instead of creating space for something real. And without realizing it, they become forgettable. But occasionally, she meets someone different, someone who doesn't rush to fill silence, someone who doesn't try to impress in the first 5 minutes, someone who asks a question that interrupts her autopilot thinking. That small pause creates emotional presence. And in that moment, real intrigue begins. Attraction works on two levels, physical and psychological. Most men focus only on appearance, but the deeper layer, the psychological experience, is what creates emotional attachment. A woman is drawn not just to what a man has, but to how she feels in his presence. And emotionally, the brain remembers experiences, not facts. So when a conversation makes her feel something meaningful, that feeling doesn't disappear. It lingers. It resurfaces later in silence. That's where attraction deepens quietly. This is why the goal is never to say more. It's to say what matters. Not to perform, but to connect. And the most effective way to do that is through intentional questions that open emotional doors instead of closing them. Most men, however, approach conversations like a presentation. They talk about achievements, lifestyle, and experiences. And while there's nothing wrong with that, it often turns interaction into performance. And performance creates distance. I once worked with someone who couldn't understand why his conversations never led anywhere meaningful. He was successful, confident, and socially skilled. But every interaction ended the same way. Polite engagement followed by emotional distance. The issue wasn't effort. It was depth. So instead of focusing on what to say about himself, he shifted to focusing on what to understand about her. In his next conversation, he asked a simple but thoughtful question. The response changed instantly. The pace slowed, the energy softened, and afterward, she said something he didn't expect. Talking to you feels different. That's the shift, when interaction becomes experience instead of exchange. The first powerful question is, what's something you used to believe strongly but don't anymore? This does something most questions don't. It takes her inward. It makes her reflect on growth, change, and experience. And when someone revisits their evolution, they naturally become more open. The key is not to interrupt, not to rush, just to let silence exist. Because in that silence, she feels heard in a way most people never make her feel. Then comes another layer. When do you feel most like yourself? This bypasses surface identity completely. It reveals who she is without roles, expectations, or performance. And as she connects with that feeling, she subconsciously associates it with you, the person who helped bring it out. You don't need to force anything. You just need to stay present with her answers. Ask gently, explore naturally, and let the conversation unfold instead of steering it. Because when someone feels truly understood, something interesting happens. They begin to understand you back. And from here, everything deepens. Attraction is never created through pressure. It's created through emotional safety, curiosity, and presence. And once you understand this, you stop trying to impress and start creating experiences that people remember long after the conversation ends. The other response, however, shifts the tone completely. Instead of giving a quick surface level answer, it gently extends the moment by asking, what do you think your life would feel like if you actually did? That small change matters more than it seems. One version closes the thought, the other keeps her inside it, inviting her to stay with her imagination a little longer, to feel it instead of just describe it. And that's the real difference between a conversation she forgets and one that stays with her long after it ends. Now, think about this for a moment. How often do people actually feel heard when they talk about their dreams? Not corrected, not redirected, not rushed toward realism, just heard. In most conversations, that space doesn't exist. The fourth question goes deeper into something even more personal. You ask her, what kind of connection do you believe you truly deserve? This isn't a casual question. It moves directly into her beliefs about love, relationships, and self worth, often things she hasn't clearly put into words herself. Her response might come with clarity. She may describe a connection built on respect, emotional safety, understanding, and consistency. Or she may hesitate, searching for language for something she has only felt, not defined. That hesitation is just as meaningful as an answer because it often reflects unresolved experiences, moments where she accepted less than she truly wanted, or situations that shaped what she now expects from others. This is where emotional trust begins to form, not through effort or intention alone, but through safety. The feeling that she can express something real without being judged or corrected. And in that moment, your role is not to analyze or interpret her experience, it's simply to stay present with it. Because when a woman opens up at this level, she isn't just sharing information, she is revealing how her internal world is structured. And your response, especially your ability to stay grounded and attentive, determines whether she continues opening up or slowly pulls back into herself. Now, the fifth question often becomes the most intimate turning point in the conversation. You ask, what's something you wish people understood about you, but usually don't? This question tends to unlock honesty that doesn't surface in everyday interaction. She might say that people assume she is always strong when in reality she feels overwhelmed more often than she shows. Or that she comes across as distant when in truth she is simply selective about who she lets in. Or she may admit that she often gives more than she receives without knowing how to change that pattern. And this is the moment where your presence becomes more important than your words. Because if you rush to respond, try to fix it, or lighten the mood too quickly, you interrupt something fragile that is forming. But if you stay with her, calm, attentive, and grounded, you communicate something far more powerful than advice ever could. A simple response like, that actually makes a lot of sense, or I can understand why you'd feel that way, is often enough. Because what she is responding to isn't complexity, it's presence. The sixth question gently turns her attention toward reflection and growth. If you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be? This opens a different emotional layer. Now, she is not just talking about who she is today, but how she became that person. Her answer might touch on trusting herself earlier, speaking up sooner, walking away from what didn't feel right, or learning to be kinder to herself in difficult moments. And without realizing it, she is revealing her values, what she has learned, what she regrets, and what she now protects. Each question in this progression is intentional. One leads into identity, another into desire, another into self-worth, and another into reflection. Layer by layer, the conversation becomes less about talking and more about revealing. At this point, something subtle has already changed. If you've been genuinely present, she doesn't experience you as just another conversation. She experiences you as someone who listens differently, someone who doesn't rush, someone who allows space instead of filling it. And this is where many men make a critical mistake. They try to escalate or push the moment forward too quickly. But real connection doesn't respond well to pressure, it responds to patience. So instead of forcing direction, you let the connection breathe. Before moving to the final question, pause and reflect on something important. Are your conversations actually helping you discover who someone is, or are they just helping you fill silence? Because that shift alone changes everything. Now we arrive at the final question, the one that ties all the previous layers together. You ask, what does freedom mean to you personally? And instantly the tone changes again. Freedom is not just an abstract idea, it is deeply personal. It reflects values, emotional needs, and the boundaries someone is trying to protect or create in their life. Her answer may begin simply freedom as independence, choice, or control over her time. But if the conversation continues naturally, it often becomes more revealing. Freedom might mean emotional peace. It might mean not needing to prove herself. It might mean being able to express who she truly is without fear of judgment or misunderstanding. And at this point, something important connects all the earlier questions together. None of them were about collecting answers. They were about creating an experience, one where she feels safe enough to think, reflect, and express what usually stays unspoken. Because people don't remember every question they are asked. They remember how they felt while answering them. Think about your own life for a moment. The people you feel closest to are rarely the most impressive ones. They are the ones who made you feel understood without effort. The ones who created space where you didn't have to filter yourself. And that is exactly what is being built here, not through performance, but through presence. But there is something most people still misunderstand. Knowing what to ask is only part of the equation. Knowing how to carry the conversation is what creates depth. These questions are not a checklist. They are not meant to be rushed through. They are entry points into different emotional spaces. You open one, you stay there, you explore it. You allow silence when it naturally appears. And only when the moment feels complete do you move forward. Because in real conversations, nothing meaningful happens when you force progression. It happens when you allow unfolding. And when someone feels that you are not trying to impress them, but actually trying to understand them, something shifts internally. They relax. They open up more naturally. And they begin to associate your presence with emotional ease rather than pressure. Attraction, in its deeper form, is not loud or immediate. It is quiet. It builds through emotional safety, attention, and genuine curiosity. And once you understand that, your entire approach to connection changes, not because you learned what to say, but because you learned how to be in a conversation. In the end, this all comes down to one simple shift, moving from trying to impress someone to actually understanding them. Real connection doesn't come from perfect words or clever lines, but from presence, curiosity, and the ability to make another person feel truly seen. When a woman feels safe enough to open up and express who she really is, attraction forms naturally, not through pressure, but through emotional depth. And once you learn to create that kind of space in conversation, you stop chasing attention and start becoming someone people remember for how they made them feel.